The Saddle River Day School TEDx group is dedicating this event to Jason Weinger and his loving family.
From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theatres, every day people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a non-profit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Coming to you straight from your living rooms, welcome to our 5th annual TEDxYouth at Saddle River Day. Hello everyone, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Steven.
And we are going to be your hosts for today's event.
Today, you will hear from students, teachers, and keynote speakers who have been preparing talks since the beginning of the school year. We'll learn new ways to view society and ourselves as we begin the new decade.
We encourage you all to open your minds to these new ideas, and we hope you're able to take something away from them. Although this is not the setting we wish we would have had, the show must go on, and we're beyond excited to share these talks with you all. This year's TEDx event focuses on 2020 vision, and what our speakers and performers believe are the most important things to be shared as we begin this new decade together. Our event will consist of 3 sessions, each of about 40 minutes long. Our speakers and performers have been working long and hard on their talks and performances, so we hope you enjoy the show. Accompanying us with pieces on the piano, in between talks and performances, will be Junior Rosie Juan and Senior Maria Pan.
It's time to turn your cell phones off. Not that we would know, but still, focus people. Grab your popcorn and get comfy as we open our first session, Taking in the View, and welcome our first speaker of the day. To start the show, we have a special keynote speaker, Lana Nawa, who is the co-founder of Impact Everything, a social enterprise in Rhode Island. She will be talking about the power of social enterprises like her own. Please give a warm welcome and undivided attention to Lana and enjoy the show.
If I asked you to think of someone who changed the world, who would you think of? You might imagine someone in history like Mother Teresa or Einstein or Malcolm X, someone who's dedicated their entire life to their work. You might believe that making a huge impact is very difficult and takes a lot of time. But what if I told you it could be much simpler than that? Something that you could do right in your own home, just through your daily consumption habits. And just through that daily routine, you could actually be a part of changing history. If there is one wish that I had for 2020, it's that this is the year we would all become conscious consumers. Not because we want to, but because we have to save our planet and our people. But before I get into all of that, let me introduce myself. My name is Lana Nawa. I'm an average Asian American girl who who grew up in a small town in Connecticut. My mother and father immigrated here from Thailand in 1987 to pursue the American dream. Determined to show that I appreciate all the sacrifices they made for me, I went on to graduate with honors at the University of Connecticut, acquiring a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I became a chemist at a prestigious pharmaceutical company. It seemed as if my whole life plan was already set up for me. And then a sudden event happened that changed everything. In 2015, a massive earthquake struck Nepal, taking nearly 9,000 lives and injuring 22,000 people. At that time, I had been dating a Nepali boy in college named Saroj, who was deeply affected by this tragedy. And when someone you love becomes deeply affected by anything, that incident hits you 10 times harder. Saroj and I wanted to help, but we didn't know how. But as things were seeming to fall apart, it also became clear that there was an opportunity to piece things back together. We both quickly got our college buddies together to host multiple fundraisers, from lemonade stands to car washes to a 5K, to raise relief efforts. Together, we raised over $10,000 in just 3 months. We almost couldn't believe how far we had come. However, we wanted to do one extra bit more. We wanted to use our skills to help rebuild Nepal directly and see that 100% of the relief efforts were used towards good. We hopped on a plane to Nepal to see ourselves what good we can do. When we arrived, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of trial and error. But one thing remained the same throughout the journey: our determination to help rebuild Nepal. And thank God, Saroj had studied civil engineering at UConn. That came in handy. After 4 months, we ended up building a beautiful primary school on the top of the cloud lines of Ramche, Nepal. The whole thing was really nuts. Time flew by so quickly. It's as if the school building experience had come on as suddenly as the earthquake. But building a school gave us so much confidence that if we really put our heart and soul into something, we could achieve something really impactful. The time came for me to return back to America to my 9-to-5 job. It was crazy. I continued to work in lab, but my heart was still in Nepal. How could I just go on living my normal, mundane, privileged routine when so much was happening in the world outside of me? I started questioning the purpose of my career. What's the purpose of my life? And as I was really thinking about this, I was thinking about debating changing my careers, but really, would I dare to actually leave a really stable lifestyle to continue to give back to those in need? The thought was really terrifying, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't see how any of that would be possible. Plus, all I knew was chemistry, and perhaps building the school was just a rare accomplishment to occur only once in my lifetime. I grew depressed, really depressed thinking about this, and I started to watch a lot of TED Talk videos on YouTube, endless of them, trying to find the purpose of life and muster up the courage to actually leave the safe lane and make something more impactful of myself. But honestly, what did that even look like? I needed to pack my bags and do more soul searching. I wanted to find the career of my dreams. I didn't want to have to choose between making a living and giving back. And I believed that both were possible. Not sure where to begin, I started volunteering in anything I was passionate about, from eradicating human trafficking to saving the world from climate change. I looked up conferences and events and organizations in the West Coast. Off I went my first time to California. And then I came across 2 magical words that changed the course of my life: social enterprise. I love social enterprise. It's the best of both worlds. Social enterprise is when you apply business strategy to run and financially sustain a social or environmental mission. A good example of a social enterprise is For Ocean. For every bracelet that you purchase, like the one I'm wearing today, 1 pound of trash is removed from our world's oceans. And since opening to this day, over 8 million pounds have already been removed. And that is just the impact of one social enterprise. I had found my answer. I was ready. I was going to open up a social enterprise. Not sure what that looked like yet, but that's what I was going to do. I immediately called up Saroj, who was still in Nepal building the school, and told him about my newfound discovery. And I did a ton of research into looking into more businesses that did impactful work. And the deeper I dove into learning about social enterprise, I came to learn that social enterprise can actually solve some of our major global issues. When today's companies are so focused on a single bottom line, we see immoral actions taken just to maximize profits. We find sweatshops and child labor in the clothing that we wear. We find that animals are being killed and grown and slaughtered at abnormal rates just to feed us. And we find ourselves living in a time where by 2050, there may be more pieces of plastic in our ocean than fish. Having eternal economic rate of growth is not sustainable, and we have to change the way we consume if we want to sustain our planet. And companies, they don't have to choose between saving our planet and making a profit. And we, as consumers, can vote with our dollars. Social enterprises have a new business model with a triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. And when all three exist in harmony, businesses can be used as a force for good. Imagine how much change could we create if every single thing that we purchased from a business, everything we ate, everything we used, everything we wore, not only served the purpose that we purchased it for, but also the purpose of making a positive impact. Can you imagine what our world would look like? I surely can. In order to change the world and become conscious consumers, the first step is taking individual responsibility. No matter how little that step you take is, you have to believe that you can and you will make a difference. And then start locally in your community and be the change that you wish to see. Today, I'm using my biodegradable phone case. Once it's used, I could simply compost it back into the earth. Choosing what materials make up your everyday goods is a significant way to make an impact. About 150 million plastic phone cases end up in our landfills each year, each one taking up to 1,000 years to decompose. So when you choose items in your home, in your everyday life, stay away from plastic. Think reusable, recyclable instead. And when it comes to things you wear, your clothing, think organic, pesticide-free, and natural fibers. Each time we purchase something, we must also remember all the people who were involved in the process. Every step of a supply chain, from the farmers to the factories where our goods come from, people are affected. Were they paid a living wage? Were they provided with fair opportunities? Today, I'm wearing my favorite jewelry line, handmade by survivors of sex trafficking, providing girls a life of freedom, dignity, and hope. Choosing fair trade, slow fashion, and brands that are transparent about supply chains is important for the well-being of humanity. To consume consciously also means to think about where your proceeds go. Sometimes it can even result in a direct, tangible act of kindness. Like my pants I'm wearing, for example. Not only were the materials ethically made, but it also funded the planting of 10 trees. Can you believe that? And this social enterprise even goes the extra mile to include you in the process of giving. It even comes with a little code that lets you track exactly where your trees will go. Sometimes the acts of kindness can be through charitable proceeds, like this dress, for example, which funds the construction of a new school in Karinda, Uganda. And lastly, because this whole journey started from our travels through Nepal, we decided that being an impactful, conscious person includes traveling with purpose. The best way to make change is to be the change everywhere you go. Whether you're moving about locally in your community or globally across the world, give back when you can. Be a part of the solution. Spread this lifestyle and this movement. Donate your times on your winter and spring breaks. You can be a ripple effect of change. Now, I'm just one person who didn't do anything extraordinarily special today. Just by waking up this morning, getting dressed, and coming to this talk, my entire outfit alone has provided sustainable employment to those in need, has donated 1 headband to a child with cancer, donated 10 meals to the elderly in Guatemala, planted 10 trees, picked up 1 pound of trash from our world's ocean, and gave someone 18 months of clean water. If just 100 people alone who view this video decide to make the same decisions in one day, that would result in 1,000 pounds of trash removed, 1,000 trees planted, 1,000 children with cancer affected, 1,000 meals donated, 1,800 months of clean water provided, and fair trade, sustainable employment for a whole community, and the construction of a school. Saroj and I were so excited when we learned about the power of social enterprise that we decided to dedicate our lives to help others consciously consume. But first, we started really small with just one product. We started off with a tiny table, went back to Nepal in 2017, and partnered with Nepali artisans to have an eco-friendly backpack made where every sale would fund 8 hours of education. Sales went so well. In the first rounds, we provided over 400 hours of education. So we decided to continue traveling, spreading our mission, spreading our pop-up shop, and sharing our story. And we bumped into so many amazing people on the journey who weren't building schools, but providing clean water, protecting our environment, helping rescue animals, and so much more. Fast forward 2 years later, as we continue to spread the movement, we expanded to 12 different causes, partnered with 65 other social entrepreneurs, benefiting a total of 55 different countries. Saroj and I opened up the first social enterprise storefront with over 2,000 products in Providence, Rhode Island on December 4th, 2017. Every product served to make a positive impact on the world. We decided to name our store Impact Everything. Impact Everything wasn't just a store to us though. It was a movement to inspire people to live an impactful lifestyle and to pass it along to others, inspiring them to do the same. So on the weekdays, it served as a store, but on the weekends, it served as a community center. We held free events from motivational movie nights, live music, zero waste DIYs, to community cleanups together, hosting over 50 events in our first year of opening. And then every summer, it was an adventure with our customers. We took 10 to 15 people abroad with us to continue volunteering in Nepal. We track our impact with a chalkboard behind our cash register. It reads the number of times that you made an impact, representing every product sold as every purchase has a purpose. Today, we're at over 20,000 impacts. We've taken 26 customers abroad to continue to volunteer, and we're now on our way to building our second school in Karindi, Uganda. Imagine, what would our world look like if we all decided to become conscious consumers? Change is possible. Change is needed. If we each play our part, we could end human trafficking. We could end climate change. We could end world hunger, you name it. But we need to be in this together because it will take all of us to save our planet and our people. You don't have to choose between living and giving back. You can live and give back every day. And that's the power of social enterprise. The average person makes 35,000 decisions in just one day. That means that each of us will make about 2.5 million decisions in our lifetime. Our generation has overwhelming global issues to face. But if we each change our daily consumption habits to more mindful decisions, we could be so much more. So remember, the next time, the next dollar that you spend, cast a vote on the type of world that you want to build. So next time you're shopping or making a purchase, think about the materials, the people, the impact that you're making. Will you be a part of the problem, or will you be a part of the solution? Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Lana. That was really inspiring. I now know how I can make a difference in the world with each purchase I make. And we'd like to thank you again for joining our community and sharing your knowledge. Welcoming to the stage, junior Susanna Bobbs, who will be doing a duet with her twin sister, Bethany Bobbs. They will be playing a duet for viola and cello, KV 423 by Mozart.
That was so special seeing you performing together. Thank you both. Next up, we have sophomore Natalie Janowski, who will be talking about what it means to be a good person and how you can embody that idea.
Hello, my name is Natalie Janowski, and I'm going to be talking about why do people choose to be good. Have you seen the TV show The Good Place? Well, on September 1st, 2017, this comedy changed my entire view of the world. Seems crazy, right? It really got me thinking about what I am doing and what people in general are doing to be good people. The Good Place is a fantasy about a town where those who have been good throughout their lives go to once they've died. People's entry to the town relies on how many points they've received during their lifetime. A certain amount of points are gained for every good deed and are subtracted for every bad deed. Despite the fact that it's a comedy, it really made me think about my actions, and I started to think about every single decision I made. Every time I did anything, I'd agonize about the potential impact of my actions. I'm not exaggerating when I say that by simply opening the door for my friend, thoughts would rush through my head like, how many points will I receive for opening this door? Is my friend going to lose points for not saying thank you? Am I only holding this door because I want more points? Will that affect my points? Are there any points at all? It made me feel super nervous and uncertain that I didn't know what was going on. Am I a good person? What defines a good person? That thought brings me to a new idea. Is our goodness defined by the things we do or the thoughts we have? For example, a person feels guilt for doing a bad thing, right? I believe that the guilt they feel proves their identity as a good person. It's the feeling of, oh, I shouldn't have done that, now I feel bad. That is actually telling them that their heart is good. Most people don't like watching others suffer, and based on the level of guilt felt, our brains tell us, I'm not going to make this mistake again, and I'm going to do better. My perception is that perhaps guilt directs our moral compass and tells us what's right and what's wrong. Anyone can make a bad decision, but that does not necessarily make them bad people. The guilt they feel in their gut proves their goodness. The same can go for good deeds. Doing good deeds does not necessarily make you a good person. People donate millions of dollars to various charities. Many of those times, the donors would get recognition for his or her act. They'll even be viewed as a hero to some. But one can think, would that donor give his or her money if it weren't for the attention that the media or even just friends and family would give them? Some people do good deeds for selfish reasons. Their efforts aren't genuine. I'm not saying all, but some. It almost seems as though our world is slowly losing the meaning of what it means to be a good person with the more media we're being exposed to. Influencers are heading in the direction of pleasing their followers rather than acting from their heart. Sure, the average person can volunteer at an animal shelter or help clean up the beach, both very virtuous, but if that person couldn't post about it on Snapchat or Instagram, would they do it at all? Not all good deeds are driven by a genuine desire to help people or the world. It's like the decision was only made because their audience would think it's the right thing to do. Was I opening the door for my friend because I thought it was the right thing to do, or was it because I genuinely felt like I wanted to help her? I've noticed that holding a door for somebody has become a natural instinct. It's like if I see someone walking behind me, I automatically hold that door. And it seems as though humans are catching on to the idea that good deeds should be programmed as a logical impulse. Carrie Siggins is the author of her own blog and wrote that if one chooses to be kind, the world would immediately be a better place for each of us. Rather than feeling judged, shamed, shunned, or ignored, we would feel seen, appreciated, accepted, and respected. Since our moods and emotions tend to be contagious, we would be spreading happiness rather than, as she says, yuckiness. Humans are becoming kinder and more helpful to each other, and that's great. We're gradually becoming better people, right? That point leads me to think that eventually everyone is going to know to hold that door. There was a German philosopher named Hegel. He believed that it is inevitable that all humans will learn from their past mistakes and incrementally progress towards a utopia. A utopia is where people's souls will be set free and there will be nothing wrong ever. Now, let's fast forward to that day when something like Hegel's so-called utopia has ultimately evolved. Where everyone is doing the right thing by holding that door. One boy forgets. How is he going to feel? Will he feel guilty for knowing he could have done more to improve someone else's day? Or will he be scared that he will get in trouble for not following what he was raised to do? Is our goodness going to rely on constant fear? I don't think so. I think we should feel pleasure in helping others. We should help people out of love and kindness, not fear. After all, that's better for everyone involved. Now, even after spending hours and hours working on this talk, I still come up with new ideas and questions. But I personally think that one of the best feelings is the satisfaction I get if I've made a positive impact on someone's day. I came across this blog called Project Helping. It discusses the scientific reason behind why doing good things makes a person feel good. The sensation is known as helper's high. It is produced when your brain releases endorphins. It's basically the feel-good chemical of your brain. If you do something good, your brain pleasure center lights up, releasing the endorphin and producing the so-called high. But why does doing good things make us release these endorphins? What I'm trying to say is, why do we find pleasure in helping others? Maybe it's that us human beings feel the urge to advance together. We are one nation, we are growing every day. The only way to succeed on this planet is to work together, and that way we can collectively advance. I'm sure you're all aware of how crazy our world has been the past couple of months, but every time I turn around, I'm seeing new examples of how people are reaching out to total strangers to help them during this crazy time. For example, people are making masks from scratch and sending them to medical workers in need of more supplies. Others are volunteering their time and effort to cook countless amounts of food for first responders, the homeless, food pantries, and other civilians. We, as a human race, want to get through this together. Now maybe that is why we choose to be good. Because we subconsciously want to help our own kind succeed and push through whatever challenges that are put into place. After listening to this, I want to ask you to consider the following questions. Why do you act the way that you do? Is it to gain a good reputation? Do you want to ultimately end up in the good place? Feel helper's high? Run away from guilt? Perhaps you want to do the right thing. Or maybe you feel your gut pushing you to do what you think is best for your fellow humans. Maybe you feel all of these things. The only person that knows is you. Nobody knows why humans make the decisions we do. Only you know what's going on in your head when you make that decision. So think about why you're making that choice. When you go to sleep, are you satisfied with your decisions? Do you think you're a good person? Thank you.
Thank you for your perspective, Natalie. And trust me, if I were there for you, I would open the door for you. Oh wait, I am. Here she is again, one more time everyone, Natalie Janowski. Let's welcome to the stage Senior Maury Moo, who will be sharing a poem with us called Time, written by Maury himself.
Hello everyone, my name is Maury Moo. For this year's TED Talk, I want to share a poem with you. The name of my poem is As the Clock Ticks. Time is a factor you should mind so that you're not left behind. A moment, once lost, is hard to find, so value it and keep it in mind. Guard your moment and you'll be on the safe side. The rules of time we have to abide. The reality is harsh. We're all slaves of time. For the bond we have with time is not something we can unwind. Time gives us power and strength, but only if we know the secret to manage it at length. I promise I will cherish its value. That was my oath. As making the most of seconds, minutes, and hours was key to my personal growth. As the clock ticks, days pass, months go, and years fly. I look up to the sky and ask why. Why won't time stop? Why is it so unforgiving? Time is running out. Will my heart stop beating? I've complied with the rules of time, but why am I still here? Lying on a bed, sweating profusely in fear. Indeed, time cannot be borrowed to suit your pace. Time is always on the run, and it's a never-ending race. Thank you.
Thank you, Maury, for the lovely poem. We'll miss you next year, but we know you'll never be too far.
What's that in the ocean I see? I think it's a shark. Next up is sophomore Brandon Tucker discussing the importance of sharks in our ocean's ecosystem.
I'm sure many of you here today are afraid of spiders, as I'm sure many of you here today are afraid of snakes. But what about sharks? I'm sure many of you here today have a fear of sharks as well. Due to popular movies like Jaws and The Shells, a fear of sharks has been placed in the minds of many due to the believed aggressive nature of these creatures. But is this really the case? Are sharks really evil creatures? Are they really as aggressive as people describe them? I believe this is not a case, and I believe that sharks are really a misunderstood creature that are important to the underwater ecosystems. Unfortunately, Sharks have fallen victim to the man-hungry stereotype society has placed on them. Anytime a shark attack occurs, it is glorified by the media, which just furthers the fear of sharks as a whole. But really think about it. How many shark attacks occur in a year? Well, according to the Florida Museum International Shark Attack File, in the year 2019, there were a total of 141 confirmed shark attacks, with 41 being provoked. Now, this may sound like a lot, but when you make the comparison, you'll find this is actually a very small amount. In fact, one is more likely to be struck by lightning than to be attacked by a shark. It is estimated that 1,000 people are struck by lightning each year. Now let's compare that to car accidents. Organizations such as the NHTSA estimate that 1.3 million people are killed in car accidents each year, with an average of 3,300 deaths per day. Sharks are not a small group of fish. There are over 500 species of sharks split across 12 different orders. Across all of these species, only a few of them are ever responsible for attack on humans. In fact, only about 5 or 6 are ever responsible for these attacks. Even then, only 3 shark species are considered aggressive by nature, those being the great white shark, the tiger shark, and the bull shark. Even then, people still believe that these sharks are nothing but mindless killing machines hell-bent on tearing people apart. Most shark attacks occur when the shark is provoked, when it's bothered or attacked by someone. Shark attacks that are unprovoked are usually attacks on surfers who, right before standing up to ride away, cast a shadow with the board and their arms and their legs that imitates the shape of a seal, which is a shark's prey. So the sharks don't necessarily mean to attack the people, more so they confuse the people for their favorite food. But what about the sharks' lives? Humans seem to complain whenever a shark kills someone, but no one seems to bat an eye whenever a shark kills a human. In fact, 100 million sharks are killed a year by humans. It is estimated by many scientists that overfishing has reduced the number of large predatory fish by 90% over the past 50 to 100 years. Sharks now represent the largest group of threatened species on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. Despite this, only 3 shark species are protected from the dangers of international trade, those being the great white shark, whale shark, and the basking shark. Over the 500 species, only 3 are protected. The rest are just seen as low priority or are just forgotten about. But what should it matter whether they live or not? Well, it matters because sharks are a vital part of the underwater ecosystems, especially coral reefs. You see, in the recent documentary, Our Planet, on Netflix, they delved into the importance of sharks on coral reefs. Since sharks are at the top of the ecosystems, they feast on the smaller fish, thus being a sort of population control for the other creatures on the reef. Take the sharks out and the population begins to grow and the ecosystem crumbles. Sharks also act as a sort of health indicator for other fish by eating the sick or dying fish that would infect the rest of the reef. For example, by removing the sharks, large predatory fish, such as groupers, begin to feast on their prey until neither is left alive, thus leading to the spread of macroalgae, which consumes the corals, and then eventually the reef crumbles. This population control and this power that sharks have also has an effect on the economy. A study in North Carolina showed that the decrease of shark populations led to an increase of ray populations. The increase of ray populations led to a decrease in the number of bay scallops as they were all consumed by the stingrays. Without any bay scallops left, the stingrays had to move on to other bivalves. In this case, they moved on to the quahog, which is a clam-like mollusk and a key ingredient in clam chowder. Without any quahogs left, Many restaurants had to remove this American classic from their menus. This not only shows that the decrease of sharks can have an impact on the ecosystems, but it can have an impact on the economy. Even through ecotourism, sharks have become a valuable part of the economy. Through dive tourism, a single reef shark can bring in up to $250,000 over the course of its lifetime. Normally, when sold for consumption, it would only make about $50. Not only is it more valuable to keep them alive, but we'd be losing money if we were to kill them. With the annual arrival of the whale shark in Belize, it is estimated that nearly $2 million can be made from one whale shark. It is more valuable to care for these creatures rather than kill them. This is a worldwide issue, but there are things that we as a community can do to help. First of all, and this should be very easy for everyone to understand, do not purchase or consume items containing shark fin. It should never be acceptable to consume sharks, especially considering the threat they face. This isn't just limited to shark fin. This also includes shark cartilage and shark oils, which can be found in a range of items, such as beauty items and health nutrition. By boycotting shark products and products that put sharks at risk, we can reduce market demand and thus help these creatures. On the same note, we need to limit seafood consumption. Commercial fishing not only has a negative impact on the shark's food, but it has a negative impact on sharks. Sharks themselves are a byproduct of commercial fishing and are thus targeted by commercial fishermen. Secondly, always use sustainable alternatives and substitutes. Many places have opted to stop using plastic straws and plastic products, and this is a good step towards this goal. Finally, stay current through social media and learn what you can do to help protect these creatures. Tell your family and friends what they can do and get them to protect them as well. Learn what activities put the shark at risk. So as you can see, not only are sharks not as aggressive as they seem, they're also vital to the ocean's ecosystems. In a way, we've already making great strides towards this goal, as the restrictions set in place by the coronavirus have given the environment a sort of break. In the first few months alone, carbon emissions have dropped dramatically, and, as I'm sure everyone is aware, seafood consumption has also dropped dramatically. Now would also be a good time to start reading up on the topic and doing some research, as we all have this time off. But while we have been improving, we have to make sure that this continues. Once this is all over, we cannot go back to how we were. Everyone needs to do what they can and get everyone involved. Do as much as you can to help save our sharks.
Wow, I didn't realize how important sharks are. Thanks, Brandon. When I'm finally able to go to the beach again, I'll be thankful to see a shark. Well, I might turn and run, but I'll still be glad that they're here. Let's welcome Senior Maria Pan, who will be performing Colorful Clouds Chasing the Moon by Yundi Lee on the piano.
Wow, that almost put me to sleep. It was so soothing. I think we can all use some calming music in our lives during quarantine. Thank you, Maria. Next up is Joe McMenamin, who will be discussing the many ways in which we remember our history and the importance of monuments in our culture.
This is a statue of Robert E. Lee and his horse Traveler in Charlottesville, Virginia. As we probably know, Lee was the top military leader of the Confederacy during the Civil War, and at first glance, it might seem fairly innocuous. The world is full of statues of dead people, but there is a growing movement to remove Confederate statues throughout America, arguing that they represent racism and celebrate the enslavement of African Americans. In fact, this particular statue was slated to be taken down. In February of 2017, the Charlottesville City Council voted to remove it. And in June of that same year, the mayor and city council unanimously decided to change the park's name from Lee Park to Emancipation Park, which is a huge change. But in August of 2017, a Unite the Right rally organized by neo-Nazis and white supremacists took place in Charlottesville. Its stated goal was unifying the American white supremacist movement and opposing the removal of this statue. On the night of August 11th, a tiki torch-lit procession marched through the nearby University of Virginia campus. Then, the day after this march, the rally encountered counter-protesters. Violence ensued, culminating in a self-identified white supremacist ramming his car deliberately into a crowd of pedestrians at 28 miles per hour. One person, Heather Heyer, was killed. 19 others were injured. He was convicted of violent crimes. But how did we get here? How is it possible for a statue to be the catalyst for so much violence and anger? How can a simple statue represent so powerfully such different things to different people? Whenever we get into debates about the removal of Confederate statues, one argument that always seems to come up is that by removing them, we are destroying history. And I want to talk about this today, because I think the questions I've raised are related to the larger question of how we remember the past and what exactly history is. I am Joe McMenamin. I teach history here at Saddle River Day School, and I want to talk a little bit about monuments, memorials, and museums. In many ways, these are the most public ways in which we encounter history, and they tell us a story. But before we get into that, we need to take a step back and consider the question, what is history? We often think of history as simply everything that's happened before the present. World War II, the Big Bang, ancient China, and Neanderthals are all part of what we might term history. But I want to challenge that idea. History isn't simply what's come before now, it's a story we tell ourselves about those events. When we study history, we're not really studying some objective past or a list of factual events. What we're studying is the stories we tell ourselves about the past that we often claim to be objective and true. We can even see this distinction in the etymology of the word. Our word history comes from the ancient Greek historia, which literally means both finding out, as in truth, and narrative, as in fiction. It's true even in some languages today. In Spanish, historia means both story and history. Same is true in German, though it's a different word. So history isn't simply the past, it's how we remember the past. We even have a word in English, prehistory, for events in the past that are not given to us orally or in writing. So World War II and ancient China, that's history. That's passed down to us as a story. The Big Bang and Neanderthals, that's not. Those are known to us through science. When we talk about the quote-unquote history of the Big Bang, we're really talking about the history of that theory, the history of the Big Bang's discovery, which has more to do with Belgium in the 1920s than with the event itself 14 billion years ago. And language is important here, because we may be thinking that, of course, history is an objective event. No one disputes that the 13 colonies fought a war against Great Britain, which resulted in their independence. But part of what gets mixed into these facts is a value judgment about those facts by the language we use. The American Revolution, for example, is known as the War for American Independence in Great Britain today, not the American Revolution. So was it not revolutionary then? This is a minor point, but it does make a difference. The way we tell a story changes what it means, just as the way we depict historical figures matter and the details we emphasize matter. Let's look at a recent example. This is a screenshot from Wikipedia, which is a great indicator of how culture views an historical event. And the page for the recent events in Minneapolis is titled Twin City Riots. Note that in the first line, the article clearly says they are also called the Floyd protests. Is it a riot or a protest? These words mean drastically different things. History is obviously written by the winners, so who will win? In the end, which of these terms will become its title? Now it's time to take a look at what all this means for museums, monuments, and memorials. Architect Walter Gropius once said that architecture is the most public of arts. In this thinking, people are exposed to more art through architecture than any other means. We may talk a lot about paintings and sculpture and theater, but the vast majority of people aren't really exposed to those arts that often. Or we have to pay to go see them. But we can see beautiful buildings constantly as we simply go about our day. I think the same argument can be made about public monuments and memorials with history. The majority of us don't read historical books, but many of us have passed by a statue in a park or a historical marker or been to a memorial. In many ways, this is how the public is exposed to history. But what are they teaching us? What stories are they telling, and do we read them critically? Let's look at museums. Sociologist Tony Bennett has argued that museums were created literally to build modern citizens. In 1848, almost every city of Europe saw a popular revolution spring up in an attempt to topple the government. They wanted to fight repression, censorship, and autocracy. If we flash forward to the 19th century, in some circles, this became known as the Museum Age. All across Europe, governments were inviting all of its citizens into these institutions to look at precious objects from around the globe. Why? What would possess a government to allow these ordinary citizens, the rabble, who just recently have risen up in revolt, to come in close proximity to their treasures? The answer simply was control. By going through a museum, you are told a story about your culture. In America and Europe, this story was often about your empire, and this empire was the end of a long line of great civilizations. Ancient Egypt gave way to ancient Greece, which gave way to Rome, which gave way to industrialized Western empires. It was a progress narrative that shows the poorest citizens to have pride in their nation, not fight against it. It argued that they were superior to the rest of the world despite their low status in their home country. And this engraving shows it perfectly. A well-to-do gentleman shows a shabby working man art in a museum. By doing so, the shabby man becomes more refined. It was a way to instill higher class attitudes in the lower classes, which of course includes decorum and politeness, the very antithesis of revolutionary traits. And all of this gave the government greater control. So stories have remarkable power, and the classic institutions that we tend to think give us an objective view of history actually are designed to tell a specific story. They aren't objectively true, but then neither is history itself. Let's shift to a memorial. This is the Vietnam Memorial, perhaps the most famous in America today. It consists of two identical walls. Each stretches about 250 feet, includes 72 panels of reflective black granite, and on them are etched the names of over 58,000 American service members killed or missing in the Vietnam War. What's it telling us? First, it's somber. It doesn't highlight the victories in the war. The sole criteria for including a name is only that they're missing or deceased. The war is about loss in this reading. Survivors aren't listed. The amount of names also culminatively reveals the event's tragic scale. It might seem common now to have names listed, but this was revolutionary at the time. It's also about these individuals. The names are not listed alphabetically. They're listed by the date they were deceased. Why? The designer, Maya Lin, argued this would make people with a common last name like Smith feel less special if they were alphabetized. So by upsetting our expectation, it forces a deeper engagement with the memorial. We have to search out the names. The reflective wall forces the visitor to see themselves reflected back among the names. You become part of the memorial. All of this is interesting, right? Most interesting, perhaps, is the color. It's not white marble that we often associate with war memorials like the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and, as seen here, the World War II Memorial, which are all white. The Vietnam Memorial is black. It reminds us of mourning. These are funeral colors, and it doesn't express triumph. As you walk along it, you begin to slowly be overtaken by its walls. You're taken literally underground at the very center of it, where the wall is about 10 feet high, and you become buried, as behind the wall is solid earth. There are subtle hints of glory. Each of the two walls points to a specific other memorial, one the Lincoln Memorial, the other the Washington Memorial. So these soldiers are pointing to our two greatest presidents. This memorial, however, was heavily criticized at the time. Tom Carhart, a Vietnam veteran and the main antagonist of the wall, wanted a grand white marble memorial which glorified the soldiers. Famously, he called the wall a black gash of shame when he saw the designs. The line was meant as a criticism, but in many ways it's true. But it's also a feature, not a flaw. The wall is something of a scar. And that tells us about the story the wall is telling. Let's take a look at the Three Soldiers statue. This was erected 2 years after the wall. It represents a compromise between people like Tom Carhart and people like Maya Lin, the two designers. It depicts three young soldiers of varying races and services carrying weapons. What's it telling us about the war, though? The soldiers are alive, looking off in the same direction. They're doing their duty. It's not just about those who died or went missing. It's about everyone. It's about carrying forward. But it's not joyous or triumphant either. Though, again, it's not somber or mournful. In some ways, it passes less judgment on the war. But the collective American imagination doesn't remember this memorial as well as the wall. And that's important. This takes us back to General Lee. There's no one way to view the past. Our history isn't objective and fixed. The General Lee statue was completed in 1924, the height of KKK membership in the United States. The statue doesn't really represent Lee. It represents how Lee was remembered in 1924, which is to say the statue is a testament to the white supremacy movement of that decade in many ways. Of course, this is controversial. After the Civil War, Robert E. Lee told in an interview, quote, "I am rejoiced that slavery is abolished." Conversely, before the war, Abraham Lincoln had said, quote, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." Which is the exact opposite of what we imagine each of these people to say. So what do we do with this information? The key, it seems to me, is to embrace the uncertainty of history, remembering that history isn't an objective account of the past, and neither are our monuments or museums which celebrate that. We sometimes think that we are, though, that they are, though, and we sometimes demand that history offer a certainty on what happened. Unfortunately, that's not possible. We have to decide for ourselves how we remember the past. We get to decide what's in our history, what's not in our history, and how we tell the story. And as uncomfortable as it might be, we might want to be more willing to accept the uncertainty of the past.
Thank you, Mr. McManaman, for your talk. I always saw monuments as pieces of art, and now I'm able to appreciate their true meanings and significance.
We hope you enjoyed these inspiring talks and stay tuned for session 2. In the meantime, take some time to reflect on these topics, and hopefully you're all inspired to share some of your own ideas. We'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. Now go stretch your legs so you're back on your A game when we return.